Hi, this is Jenny, and today we're going to do a 5-minute sketch of a pumpkin using colored pencils. The first thing I like to do is I like to sketch my pumpkin. So I sketch my pumpkins with a C as the outside part, and then I do a backwards C for the other side. And then I go in and I make lines. So I make 2 lines on each side of the pumpkin. And they are curved. They go from top to bottom. And that gives us our bumps of our pumpkin. Now, some people start out with just the oval here. And I understand that, but I don't do that. But then I come back in and I kind of make my oval part at the top and the bottom. I like to start with the outside so I know how large I'm going to have my pumpkin. And then I feel like this one's kind of a little wider than I'd like, so I'm going to just erase that a little bit. And then these are the ridges. I don't know what you call those on a pumpkin. And I just kind of add a little scallop there so that it's not just part of that C that was here. It has a little bit of shape. And then we go up and over. And the same on this side. We want to contour the pumpkin to how it would really actually look. So see, here's my C. It wouldn't come down here. That doesn't make sense. But if I move that part up here, and I can just erase that. As long as you're sketching, it's very easy to erase your lines. So now we've got our pumpkin basic shape, and we want to add our stem. So we can have just maybe a wonky cut stem that's there in the middle, and we will be able to see that this looks like there's something missing back there. So you need to add a couple of more little bumps that go back there. That is the back part of the pumpkin that you are still seeing. Okay, so now we are going to add some color. So I always start with my brown, and we're going to add these shadows. Now you want, instead of a point of a pencil, you want to kind of get it a scribble, because if it's just the point, it's going to be like that and be more direct. If you have this piece of the point that's like flat, I don't know if you can see that, but it is easier to shade that way. So I'm going to go in with my brown pencil, and I am going to give a good shade to my lines I just drew. And remember, you have a natural curve with your hand. So see, I'm kind of gluing the side of my hand down, and then you have that natural curve. So go ahead and you don't need to do too dark on the outside, because that is the outside of that. And then we will turn your paper over, and you can do the other side, and it's more natural that way. Okay. And it doesn't have to be perfect because we are shading. You just kind of need it to be in there, and you don't want it to be the point. You want to be able to blend it easier later on. So now our pumpkin looks something like this, and you need to shade a little bit in here where it goes down into the stem, because that's a lot of shade there, a lot of shadows in there, because it dips down. Now here, you remember, you go straight at the straight part, because you're going from the top to the bottom of the pumpkin. Okay, so that's your top part. And none of this is even. You don't just draw a line and do that. You just do each individual line. It adds to the 3D of it. And then you want to do the same thing from the bottom up, because we're going to pretend the sun is coming from, you know, up on the top part. And so there's going to be some shadows down here. So once again, you want to go from the top to the bottom. And curve around. And you can see that this, my bump doesn't show anymore where I did that. So I'm going to add a little bit more pressure just in that little area. And then it's really awkward to go this way. So once again, use your turning the paper as a benefit to you, because it does help. And then you'll add those, maybe darken this a little, just adding a little pressure. And once again, this is not a line. You don't just draw a straight line. You're making it uneven. Okay, so there we go. We have that. Now, I like to add a few brown lines down just because all the pumpkins are a little different and they have these lines that, you know, go from top to bottom, but these are more defined in a real pumpkin. So we're gonna just kind of do that. Okay, now the next thing I do is I add yellow first. We're gonna add a little bit of yellow at the top because the sun is up there and it's making the orange lighter. So that's what we're going to do there. And we might just add a few just to add some different tones to our picture. And I realized that I didn't really add any brown up there. So now we're going to do orange. The orange is the easiest part at this point. So once again, see how I have a flat point? I have a sharpened pencil, but I made it flat by scribbling on another piece of paper to get that flat. And then you're going to go in with your natural curve, and you're going to go over the entire thing. From top to bottom. You don't want to scribble this way. You want to keep it from top to bottom. That's how the pumpkin goes. And you want to just start with a light pressure, and you can always add to your pressure. And then you go to the next one, and you go over that brown, because the brown is not brown on the pumpkin. It is actually orange. And you just keep going around and around. Here's going to be straight, remember. We're looking right at it. We'll do this little guy up here. And then I'm going to turn my paper. And keep doing this all the way straight to curved. Get all those little white spots that might be in there. Okay, so there is your basic pumpkin. Now you can add more if you're not liking the brown being so defined. You can just add a little on the outside of where it's more defined, and that just brings the shadows out just a little bit more to be it gradual. And you could add red to this. You can make them different colors, which is a whole nother thing. But pumpkins come in so many colors nowadays. So I just thought I would teach you the basic orange today. But I can come back another time and do some different colored pumpkins. But this is the pumpkin itself. And now we want to add the stem. Now the stem, you want to have some defined lines because there's, you know, it's a stem and it's wonky. It goes any old way. So I did use the point. And now I'm going to go back in and I'm going to color with my flat part of my pencil and make a stem. And this one's pretty wonky. I don't know if stems are ever that wonky. Maybe I'll make it less. And then you can always add, you know, some vines going on too. And your shadow here at the bottom. And there you go. There's your fall pumpkin. And that is orange with colored pencil. I hope you enjoyed today, and we'll see you next time.